Hey there Summoners, what's going on? Welcome back to our channel and it's always great to see you. My name is Nathaning and I'm here with the changes for the patch 11.24b as well as updated tier lists for all 5 roles. This will be the last balance update before Season 12 begins and I'm really excited to share with you what has changed. Make sure you hit that sub button so you don't miss out on any content like this, and let's go ahead and start the video. While previous preseason patches have only focused primarily on systems, this update only features a couple. First Strike has been a dominant choice used by innovators across several builds, and it's proven to be a great pick on lane bullies, champions who need that extra gold, and assassins who can utilize both the extra damage and gold effectively. As a completely new keystone, it was inevitable that it would receive some changes of some sort, whether it was a buff or a nerf, before the start of Season 12. Riot has decided to nerf it in its update, reducing the bonus damage by 1%. Less bonus damage also means that less gold will be paid out. Champions who deal their damage in short bursts make use of this rune far too effectively. The damage bonus is comparable to many other keystones suited solely for combat, and obviously it has that extra gold reward attached, and allows users to make big purchases faster than before. That said, we have one final system buff for glacial augment. While it was nerfed in the initial patch 11.24 update, this change was assessed as too harsh. The base slow was reduced significantly, but it was given slightly increased scaling. For this update, the healing and shielding ratio will increase glacial augment's slow a little bit more, meaning that the rune will end up slightly stronger than before in the mid to late game. While it's still unpopular, I expect this keystone to see more play as the competitive season rolls out and more players experiment with it. That covers up the system changes, so we'll hop into the champion balance beginning with the top lane. In the top lane, the first change that we'll talk about is for Dr. Mundo. If you've been staying up to date with our videos, you know that our analysts have rated him highly, especially in the low elo. During patches 11.23 and 24, Mundo dominated solo queue, pushing past the 54% win rate mark in low and mid elo ranks. Even in high elo, he was doing quite well with over a 53% win rate. Traditionally a stronger pick in low elo after his rework, it's clear that he was definitely overtuned and thus he was nerfed in the B patch. His health regeneration was reduced and Q damage lowered by 20 at max rank. Reduced base health regeneration will make laning against Mundo more manageable and give his opponents more room to outplay and find solo kills. 20 damage loss on his Q is no joke either. It's a pretty straightforward nerf to his team fighting. In spite of both these nerfs, our analysts believe Mundo will still remain a competitive pick and stay in the S tier. Speaking of staying competitive, Season 12 is just around the corner, so make sure you speak with the coach over at ProGuides.com if you want the best practice that you can get before the new season begins. Our excellent coaches can help you figure out the next steps to improve, and you definitely don't want to miss out. Next, there's Gwen, who's been itching for a buff. She's been doing poorly during the preseason, but quite frankly, her win rates have been disappointing for quite some time. Ending with a 46% win rate in high elo for both preseason patches, Riot has gone ahead and given her a massive 40 base HP buff. This is a significant increase to her early game strength, specifically her level 1 dueling power. Although it definitely does help her, we have to leave her in the B tier and assess how she performs with this buff moving forward. One notable pick to be on the lookout for is Tryndamere. The preseason has yielded some great results for him with the introduction of the new reworked lethal tempo. Various balance changes to other champions have put him in an even better spot than before, and we expect him to only get better as the season plays out. That said, the rest of the top lane tier list remains about the same. Although a nerf to First Strike will hit Jace and Victor, it's still small enough that they're likely going to remain powerful picks. Our OP top lane picks for this update are still Jace, Teemo, and Tahm Kench. If we're talking exclusively about high elo, things get competitive and Teemo can be replaced with either Camille, Irelia, or Jax. That said, our S tier is Camille, Irelia, Nasus, Jax, Malphite, Shen, Mundo, Set, Quinn, Poppy, Fiora, Yone, Tryndamere, Vayne, Kayle, and Victor. Next, we have the jungle. First up is a nerf for Talon. He's performed absurdly well in this preseason with the introduction of the new items and because of the First Strike keystone. Sacrificing next to no damage, he now farms gold even faster than before. Falling behind against Talon has never felt more agonizing than it does now, and Riot has now decided to take away some power from jungle Talon specifically. His W's monster damage has been reduced for this update. While mid lane Talon remains technically untouched, the fact that he's a weaker jungler also means that he lost some value as a flex pick. The reduced clear speed will also reduce Talon's impact in the games because power farming will be taking more time. For the aggressive players that love to gank, the sacrifices each attempt requires will also increase moving forward. With this nerf, we move Talon from the OP tier into the S tier. But don't worry, if you're talented, you still can make this work. Unlike that joke, which did not. Anyway, moving forward, there's Olaf, who's been stuck in the gutter for quite some time. Accordingly, he's received a big buff in this update. His passive maximum bonus attack speed was increased by 25%, significantly increasing his combat power and jungle clear speed. His abysmal 46% and in some brackets lower win rates have caught the attention of the balance team. With this big buff, he'll hopefully find his footing once again. We moved him up to the B tier as this is quite a significant buff for him. He might even see some more play in the top lane because of this change. For this update, we're only featuring 2 champions in our jungler's OP tier. There are a few champions fighting for a final spot in the most exclusive placement. Viego and Lee Sin come to mind, but there's even more potential for a less popular pick like Rek'Sai or Nunu to break in. Viego in particular has seen some small performance improvements following the buffs to Conqueror. Considering the fact that assassins were significantly nerfed with a reduction in first strike's damage, and it's clear that collectively most other junglers have come out slightly stronger. In the OP tier, we have Graves and Shaco, followed up by Talon, Fiddlesticks, Zac, Kindred, Kayn, Lilia, Lee Sin, Vi, Viego, Trundle, Rammus, Skarner, Master Yi, Warwick, and Shinzao in the S tier. Moving forward, let's cover the mid lane. We have some nerfs in the mid lane, beginning with Kassadin. His passive's magic damage reduction as well as his W's base damage have both been decreased. With the major reduction in Archangel Staff's cost, Kassadin has seen an incredible increase in his win rate this patch. Rather than nerfing the item, Ryan has much more reasonably decided to nerf the champion in particular. He's been an absolute menace. I mean, he's easily breaking the 53% win mark during the initial patch. These are some solid nerfs and hopefully will keep him in check. I mean, Crown of the Shattered Queen was also insane on him. Less magic damage reduction makes him a less effective counterpick, and his weaker W means that he'll exert less kill pressure and have a harder time trading back with his opponents. Although he was about to be moved into the OP tier, this nerf is definitely necessary and effective, and he'll be staying in the S tier. Next is a nerf for Lux. The preseason has heavily favored her due to the big buff to Horizon Focus, making it much easier to use. As she's seen a massive increase in her win rates, players' frustration towards her has also increased. She's recently been a powerful mid laner as well as a support due to her high damage and utility. But now that they're nerfing some of that damage and utility, that means that my friend Anna could KS me a little bit less as support Lux. Thank goodness. For the update, her Q's cooldown was increased to 11 seconds flat, and her Q's damage at later ranks was also lowered. While hitting a single ability won't destroy her, that cooldown nerf is quite significant. 2 more seconds in the mid to late game means that she's less likely to throw out an extra bind during a team fight. It also means that she won't be able to fish for her famous one-shots as often either. Regardless, while she's weaker than before, we'll leave her in the S tier. Before moving on, let me also ask you a question of the day. What champion have you been practicing during the preseason? I've been working on easy autofill picks and feel like I've been making a lot of progress with my Corki and Vi. Let me know your answers in the comments down below, and let's wrap up with the mid lane. A change that we made to this tier list this update is moving Pyke up. He's receiving a buff that we'll talk about in the support section, but it's worth noting that to this day, there are still dedicated players that still try to make him work in the mid lane. The addition of Axiom Arc has made him much more rewarding because he's able to get his ultimate pretty frequently. We've moved Qiyana up to the S tier in light of her incredible performance in Elite play. While First Strike was nerfed, Qiyana mid and jungle both tended to steer away from the new keystone. Electrocute is what's similar for players and the most effective as the extra damage goes an extra mile for her. With win rates as high as 54%, it's undeniable that at least in the top level of play, she's a dominant force with incredible burst damage and map presence. Axiom Arc is available for purchase on her, but it's typically not a core item and instead built later on into the game. Regardless, with an ultimate as impactful as hers, it's unsurprising that players are indeed finding more wins because of it. In the OP tier, we feature Zed and Victor, followed up by Sylas, Talon, Annie, Ari, Yone, LeBlanc, Kassadin, Anivia, Katarina, Ukshin, Lux, Yasuo, Tryndamere, Aesol, Kayle, Vex, Cassiopeia, and Qiyana in the S tier. With the mid lane covered, we'll be moving to the bottom lane next. Vayne is arguably the bottom laner in most need of a balance change. She's seen her win rates and ban rates steadily rise over the course of Season 11 and especially after preseason began. Lethal Tempo synergizes so well with her and her W's true damage. All of this along with her mobility has made her a great pick against several meta champions. While she does lack wave clear, she still exerts plenty of kill pressure during the laning phase. For the update, her ultimate's bonus AD was lowered by 10 at all ranks. This is a pretty sizable amount, especially considering the fact that Vayne tends to build plenty of attack speed. For now, we'll leave her in the OP tier in spite of this nerf. Varus has been in need of a buff, and he's received one in this patch for his on-hit builds. His passive's duration now scales based on his level up to 11 seconds in duration. Also, his W's on hit as well as stack damage were both increased. With other on-hit items, Varus looks quite promising with these massive buffs tailored towards high DPS in the later stages of the game. Given the fact that Lethal Tempo is now much an easier keystone to use, these buffs are surely enough to bump Varus up a tier in this update. Kai'Sa was also buffed for the update. Her passives on hit damage, Q damage ratio, and cooldown refund from her W were all increased. With so many buffs thrown into a single patch, there's a good chance that Kai'Sa pushes towards the S tier. Our analysts are optimistic and have moved her up there, but it's definitely something that we'll want to keep an eye on. That said, the only other movement that we have to mention is Corki. While First Strike was nerfed, the introduction of the Keystone has given him a second chance at life. His damage is typically dealt in quick bursts, allowing him to make the most out of the rune. In addition, Corki is incredibly powerful in the later stages of the game. He's seen a rise in popularity in the mid lane and is performing better in both of his roles, thus we moved him up a tier. In our OP tier we have Vayne, Jhin, and Jinx, followed up by Ezreal, Ziggs, Lucian, Karthus, Caitlyn, Draven, and Kai'Sa in the S tier. Finally, we'll conclude with the supports. As I mentioned earlier, the support change that we have to talk about is for Pyke. His passive's health regeneration was increased by 5%, and his Q's damage was increased by 15 flat. Both of these changes helped out his laning phase considerably. Some extra damage comes in clutch when he's trying to set enemies up for an execute with his ultimate. Health regeneration makes him a much more forgiving pick. Many enchanters outscale him, and one missed hook ends with Pyke or his laning partner taking a considerable amount of damage. Honestly, I think that's fair. I think he should be punished, but you know what? That's just on me. Extra health should help Pyke remain a threat even after a minor misplay. For now, we'll leave him in the A tier, but we'll keep an eye on him to see how he performs because of this buff. For the other changes, we moved Lux down from the OP tier. The nerf to her Q's cooldown is a big deal, but she's definitely going to remain relevant in spite of it. Replacing her is Lulu, who continues to heavily influence games with her seemingly never-ending utility. It's so good for practically any team composition as Lulu provides extra protection and enables her allies with some extra crowd control. As a result, our OP picks are Blitzcrank and Lulu, followed up by Thresh, Morgana, Maokai, Zyra, Yuumi, Sona, Nami, Soraka, Xerath, Leona, and Lux in the S tier. Blitzcrank is one of the most effective melee supports in the current support meta. His pull and high burst damage makes it so that any fight that he wants to take will typically be one that takes an enemy from full to 0 health. This makes sustain a little bit less effective against him, and even in the later stages of the game, the value of a good hook continues to heavily influence those games. That concludes our 11.24b patch rundown. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments down below. There were a ton of changes after all. Also, make sure you expand the description if you want to join our Discord. It'd be really great to see you guys there. And until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and have a wonderful holiday season. Peace.